Welcome to Brief History Mystery. Today we are talking unidentified submergible objects. From Christopher Columbus to the new UAP report to the Pentagon, unidentified submergible objects, UFOs underwater are becoming the new big thing. And I can't help but notice that, the recent New York Times story that came out, sort of leaking what the UAP report's going to say? It seems to me that they've already started the big lie. First of all, I should say, I always thought we had pretty good understanding of what was under the ocean. We've mapped the entire ocean floor, right? So we should know if something big, say an alien base or Atlantis or something like that, was hiding under the oceans, we should know it's there. Yes. Right?
Yeah.
No.
To some extent, maybe. But don't they say 95% of the oceans are undiscovered, and we know more about the surface of the moon than the ocean? So
yeah, well, our mapping of the oceans is based on satellite imagery and satellite technology. So each pixel on one of these maps that you see is actually several miles wide. So it's a very blurry map we have.
Yes, it's not in high enough resolution yet. Yeah, okay.
There's no resolution to it at all. To the point where it's so bad that 4 or 5 years ago, they sent down some UAVs, some automated robots to start scanning for this new pipeline in the Pacific. And one of them drove straight into a mountain that they didn't know was there. And there's only a handful of submarines that can even go beyond sort of a kilometre deep. Most of our nuclear submarines and things only travel about 100 metres to 200 metres deep.
What's the Mariner's Trench? 7 miles down?
7 to 8 miles. Deep.
Yeah.
So you could fit Everest in the Mariana Trench.
Indeed. And every so often we get an ancient relic pop up that we thought was extinct many millions of years ago, and then we suddenly go, oh no, somehow that species has survived to the present day. Oh
yeah.
Look.
Exactly. Oceans deep.
Could the megalodon exist?
So it would make sense to me that if aliens or UFOs or something, future people, whatever, were visiting the Earth and they wanted to stay hidden, plunk in the ocean, don't you? That's where you have your little bases and where you have your things and where you watch us from, because we can't go down there. And from what we understand of their technology, they aren't bothered whether they're in the ocean or. But at the end of the day, if a UFO's been able to travel from the distant star to here, they're not going to be bothered about going down to the Mariana Trench.
They're not using propulsion system based on inertial physics, and therefore their propulsion system, anti-gravity drives, probably don't really factor in air resistance or water resistance. So you're probably capable of travelling just as fast through water.
So why are we talking about it? The UAP report has already leaked some little bits and bobs, and we've had a few videos of Jeremy Corbell and everything else. But one of the interesting little tidbits that was released was that sonar operators had been tracking objects travelling underwater, travelling at several hundred knots.
But maybe the technology does exist. During the Cold War, we invented some incredible technologies. None much more incredible than the Supercavitation torpedo built by the Russians in the 1960s. This was a torpedo that was capable of travelling anything up to 250 knots, but it had its problems.
Its range is pretty limited. I reckon about 7 kilometres. So you've got to be pretty close to fire this thing. It's incredibly loud, and because it's a rocket engine underwater at the end of the day. So they reckon that normally a torpedo would have a sonar device to track the target. It doesn't work with a supercavitation torpedo because the actual technology is so loud, it just screams out that the sonar can't work. The sonar can't hear anything. But also, if you're the target, you can't hear anything either because it just deafens the whole ocean or something for miles around. It's incredibly loud. It's also incredibly difficult to steer because you're flying through a bubble of air. So what they have to do is they have to basically stick fins out of the torpedo that go beyond the actual bubble, so that you're hitting water basically, so you can try to steer the thing. So it steers like a pig, if at all. There's lots of variations, but all the technology that's been developed since then has been variations of the same theme, creating a massive bubble, trying to steer a bit better by creating thrust vectoring. So they're saying, well, okay, instead of trying to steer with these fins, how about we adjust the thrust from the nose and steer it that way? But the technology really hasn't moved on from the 1960s. DLBGT Defence created the Barracuda in 2004 that can again do about 250 mile an hour. One interesting project with supercavitation, though, was DARPA. DARPA, who are the masters of evil.
Indeed.
They wanted to create an underwater express program, and it's a transport submarine they want to create, that could travel at least 100 knots. The Juliet Marine Systems naval company built the Ghost naval ship for them, which used supercavitation thrusters and basically a screw that used supercavitation technology. And that is a working prototype. In 2009, DARPA announced sea trials of an unknown vehicle. And then they said that if that went ahead and worked, the General Dynamics Electric Boat Company in Northrop Grumman were given the contract. And if that worked, they were going to build a 100-foot submarine if trials were successful. As with DARPA, guess what the public response after that was? Or get what the public announcements after that was? Nothing.
The whole idea of supercavitation, it just seems like it's like the old argument between hot and cold fusion, where hot fusion you're trying to force atoms into a particular element into atoms into a particular structure by using heat and pressure and as much energy as possible. It just seems like this is the underwater equivalent, where we're trying to use inertial rocket technology to propel weapons underwater, which from the offset most people would go, well, that's a bit crazy because rockets burn and water's wet, and they're antithetical to each other. So I just think it's a lot of effort piled into what to me is probably a redundant technology anyway, when we've probably already got anti-gravity propulsion.
Well, I was wondering about this, whether that's why DARPA has gone quiet. Was it that they were developing the supercavitation technology and then realised actually there was a better way to do it, and that's why
probably
it's gone quiet, and they've sort of pushed into another area? Just to go on with things, there are massive problems with supercavitation technology, even though it does work and you can push an object through water really fast. Like I said, really, really loud, and generally water noise travels really well through the water. Do USOs even exist? All right, and I think even going back through history, we know that objects are seen in the ocean that we don't understand. Christopher Columbus, as he sailed into the New World, saw lights in the sky that descended and went into the ocean, and bright lights in the ocean. I was watching a interesting YouTube video. It was Mark Antonio, and he used to be a Navy contractor years ago. And he actually built submarines, models of submarines that they then test and whatever. And he was saying he was on a contract, and part of this is like a perk after the contract ended. They said, do you fancy going on a ride on a boat? See for real what you were working on, sort of thing. And he was just like, yeah, of course I do. So he went on a nuclear submarine ride. It was a ride along, like those movies like Coppers. I'm going on a ride along. He sat in the sonar. He tells a story about how he was feeling sick, and he was getting really badly seasick. And then he went under. He went on as they submerged, sort of thing. He was sort of like, he's like sat at the comms deck going, oh god, don't throw up all over the multi-billion-dollar submarine. So he just sat in in a chair off the side of where the command deck is in the sonar, operating sonar. And he's just sat there trying not to throw up. And all of a sudden, this kid shouts like, con sonar, and they've got a ping, they've got a contact. So the XO comes running in, and the kid goes, con sonar, fast mover, right? So the XO officer apparently says, Mark apparently though, he thought, asks for the speed and the position. So he gives him this position. When he says speed, he's reported as several hundred knots. So not several. So that could be, I would say that's anything from 300 to 700, 800, 900 knots, potentially.
That fast mover was also the language that the astronauts used, wasn't it, on the secret channel when they were describing some of the things they saw on the moon. I believe it's become a popular military term.
Yeah. Well, the XO apparently said the XO checked it. He had a look over his shoulder, and then he went, "Just log it," and basically walked away. Right? He sort of had a look at it to make sure it was nothing. It seemed to be he was checking that it was what he thought it was, and then as soon as it was, he went, "I'll just log it," and walked away.
There's nothing you can do to chase down something that's travelling 3 to 4 times the speed your vessel's capable of. There's no point intercepting, is there?
Exactly. So this Mark, apparently, though, he thought, I've got to ask. So he followed the XO and sort of went, "Oh, that was interesting, sort of thing. So what was that?" And apparently the XO turned around and went, "Hey, are you having a nice time?" And Mark sort of went, "Yeah, because let's keep it that way, shall we?" And just turned around and walked away. So it's like, that's a very, very passive aggressive, lovely threat.
Yes.
It's like, shut up, Mark, go sit down. It's completely parallel. They seem to be using exactly the same techniques, the same methods, the same methodology sort of thing to shut these conversations down.
And it'll probably be overseen by the same group. I imagine the Majestic 12 were supposedly in charge, weren't they, with cosmic level clearance. I imagine that didn't split between UFOs and USOs. I imagine they realised that, okay, these are the same things, metallic objects travelling at incredible speeds through air or water. It's all part of the same project. So I imagine it all went into the same group.
Well, yeah, exactly. So you can imagine that the leadership would be the same. So the way they deal with it is the same. And like I said,
it's just the military tends to be more often than not the witnesses, don't they, in the USO things, because you don't tend to get a lot of people out in the middle of the oceans
for no reason. Yeah.
For no reason, but you do get military ships out there just sitting in strategic locations, don't you? A lot of the time.
And the oceans are enormous. Our maps of the oceans are really poor, and you have to basically go down and look with UAVs or submarines using sonar to try to get decent enough resolution to the images and yeah, it's like trying to find. I mean, needle in a haystack isn't even remotely. It's like a needle in a haystack, but the haystack is 3,000 miles wide, up to 8 miles deep. And it's finding anything in the ocean is so difficult. 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with the ocean. So yeah, if UFOs are coming here and they're doing research projects or whatever, they could pop in and out of the ocean all day. We wouldn't know.
Also, they have noticed probably how, if they are visiting us, how hostile we are, and the development of the hydrogen bomb, and they probably are quite wary of making their presence known to us if they are visiting us, because of our hostility to our own people, let alone visitors from another planet. Combine that with the indoctrination of religion around the world, and the idea of God being more popular than the idea of an extraterrestrial existing. They're probably quite wary, because we probably don't treat them nice. We've got all these
stories. We've shot at them repeatedly.
So, well, exactly. Battle of Los Angeles. If
you believe Bob Lazar, he seemed to think at least one of the UFOs he saw had been hit by something and damaged, and we don't know how our technology might affect UFOs. There was a thing about how when we first started using radar, that was why a couple of UFOs went down, and on one hand you'd think logically, does that make any sense that our primitive radar technology could affect a UFO? But on the other hand, you think of it, it's like throwing just a load of EM radiation randomly into space, and you've got a fine-tuned high-tech UFO comes into that thing, and it's like throwing through pollution. It's like it could have screwed the technology up until they were able to adapt to it. So.
It's at least a coincidence that's worth more investigation, with the chronology of the increase of UFO sightings and supposed crashes from that sort of time, from the 40s, the development of radar and the atomic bomb onwards, seems to have been an increase in sightings.
Well, this one that gets mentioned quite a lot is the Shag Harbour incident. Air Canada Flight 305 reported seeing a bright rectangular object at 7:15 p.m. with smaller lights trailing it. At 7:19, they saw what they described as a silent explosion, followed a few seconds later by another explosion and a cloud. Captain Howard Mercy plus 20 fishermen witnessed 4 blips on their radar as they were trawling just outside of Nova Scotia. They then saw these bright 4 lights in a rectangular formation. They filed a report to the police. They literally phoned the Mounties to go and deal with it. There were several more reports. A lot of them went into the Halifax radio station around 10 p.m. 11:20 p.m. something hit the water near Shag Harbour in Nova Scotia. It was assumed it was a plane, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police were sent out. 2 of them literally got on a rowboat and rowed out to where they thought to try and see if there were survivors. As they approached it, they saw lights just under the surface of the water. They got to it, and the lights sort of disappeared down into the depths of the ocean, of the harbour. So they thought, there's no survivors, we can't find any wreckage, that's it, sort of thing. They searched for another 2 days, found nothing. They then got some divers in from the local base, and they searched the bottom of the harbour, found nothing at all. No planes were ever reported as missing. The squadron leader, Bain, was head of the air desk in Ottawa, said that they get hundreds of reports like this every week, but this is the one that actually had some concrete to it. So what do you think about the UAP report then coming out and this?
Well, relatively credible witnesses, multiple witnesses, experiencing something relatively incredible. I always give you the example of if you've got several witnesses to a crime, somebody gets convicted and gets incarcerated, yet you've got several witnesses to a UFO or a USO, being a metallic object traveling at incredible speed, performing manoeuvres that seem to not conform to inertial physics. Seems likely that it's the truth.
And we've got videos of UFOs splashing down, and Joe McCulbell released a few weeks ago, of an object coming down and then disappearing into the water. There's some people have tried to suggest actually it's an object passing over the horizon, and I'm like, that's fine, except you're completely ignoring the trained eyewitness that is operating that camera, who's seen objects all day in, day out, aircraft traveling over the horizon, disappearing, who tracked this object, thought it was weird, and as it disappears, goes splash down. He's convinced it goes into the ocean.
Yep.
We've got submarine, we've got evidence from sonar of objects traveling at hundreds of kilometers an hour underwater. Yep. What else do we really need to start thinking that this is something that this can? Do you think there's any possibility this is Russian or Chinese technology?
It's possible. Because I believe, if you look through the history of it, the Nazis were supposedly experimenting with the anti-gravity technology that the Americans and the Russians then fought over, and the scientists, like Operation Paperclip. So they both probably got some inkling as to what they were up to, and then started their own programs after World War II. So it is possible. China's probably further behind than Russia and America are. I would hasten to guess. It's possible that it's American or China or Russian technology. I'd say, yeah. The other thing that I always thinking is what's more likely? Is it more likely that our current understanding of physics is not quite correct, and that there is the possibility of travelling a lot faster than we think is currently possible with inertial physics using the current propulsion systems? And we're being very arrogant as the human race, thinking that no, we haven't invented it yet, can't exist, or that, or is it more likely that our government's lied to us? And if you look at history, it's littered with the government lying to you, and it's also littered with us being very arrogant and thinking we know everything.
Yeah, very true.
Yes. So that's why I'm pretty solid that they probably exist.
Yeah. Well, let's have a think about it for a second then. Let's assume it's not aliens. right? Because the reports told us it's not anyway. So let's assume it's not aliens, and it's Russian and Chinese technology. Why are the Americans outing them? Why are they telling us the Russians and Chinese have got this technology when officially the Americans haven't got anything that can touch it?
Because unofficially they probably have, and it's easier to shift the blame to your enemies.
So if we talk about if we use the supercavitation technology as an example,
smoke and mirrors.
Thinking,
oh, look at this tech. Oh,
don't look at what we're doing.
Don't look over here. It's a smoke and mirror thing.
They've moved on.
That's what NASA's been about for the last 70 years. Elon Musk's proved that. I'm pretty sure the military-industrial complex out of Area 51, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, raking all of the taxpayers' money for the last 70 years to the tune of, like, I don't know, tens of billions a year. They've been doing the research. So is that been hidden from NASA? So all the people at NASA think they're still on the cutting edge? Probably. But they've allowed that to continue, and they allow the people at NASA to pretend they're on the edge because it furthers the hiding of the real new tech. And as we said before, technology wins a war, and America's been quite consistent on making sure they've got the technology over the last 70 years to continue winning the wars. So would they hide it? Yeah.
As soon as I started seeing all these video evidence start coming out, and they announced that they're going to do this report, my spidey sense immediately went,
because they've got an agenda.
They seem to be, there's definitely an agenda, but they seem to be purposefully muddying the waters at every opportunity now. And this is why I wanted to do this video today, was because this USO thing, to me, is some of the most interesting stuff. It's some of the most interesting evidence that we've not really got a lot of evidence of. I want to see satellite imagery that they're talking about, because I'm like, well, we haven't got access to that. And actually, if you think about it, satellite imagery, seeing objects like the Tic Tac, Fravor saw the Tic Tac for a few minutes. The satellite might have tracked it for hours or days. And if we've got that data, that evidence, that would make massive difference. That would be huge. I think the USOs is a similar thing.
I love that STS, not the tether incident, but one of the STS footages where you've got that object that's flying around the circumference of the Earth. You see a flash as though something like a railgun is fired from the surface of the Earth at the object traversing the circumference of the Earth, and then you see it intelligently change direction by over 90 degrees. Yeah. To avoid it, almost defying inertial physics, to avoid whatever was being fired upon it.
There's a few objects in that video that are really interesting that seem to change course.
And that video is almost evidence enough that you're not being told everything. That's weapons you're not being told about that we can fire upon from the surface of the Earth at objects in orbit around the Earth. You're not being told about the object itself. It's obviously intelligently controlled because it's reacted to something in the video and then defies our current understanding of physics.
Yeah,
that video to me is enough that tells me that our current understanding of physics is not, and also the fact that I understand physics to a relatively high level, and that you can't unify the small quantum mechanics with Einstein's classical or theory of relativity, the large, the macro and the micro, and we can't unify them. Well, we're not our model's not right yet, then, is it? It's the best model we've got, and it's given us a lot of stuff: quantum mechanics, electronics, phones.
Yeah.
But until we can unify, we haven't got the full picture, have we?
We're getting some theories that are starting to get in the gravitational electromagnetic theory.
Gravitational waves, being discovered.
Starting to get an insight, aren't we? But it seems to me that every time they open a box, they go, right. Every time it's like a Russian doll with this thing. Every time we think we've cracked it, we open it up and go, there's another one inside, damn it.
perhaps inner space and outer space are infinite, and that you'll never understand it all.
I hope we don't, because it gets to a point where you understand everything. Where's the fun in that?
Inner and outer space is infinite, and every time you drill down another layer microscopically or macroscopically, there's another layer behind it. And I think that's the true nature of reality, probably. I don't think. And we're very arrogant as a species to think that us as a speck of sand on a speck of sand in a sea of stars should be able to understand it all.
I don't want to. I want to look up and wonder.
You know, quantum entanglement. That one we always go back to. That one. That's, you know, witchcraft. Are we supposed to understand that? Do we need to understand that to live our day-to-day lives on this planet? No.
They just want to understand to a point so we can use it in some way. But no, mate. And the other thing is, because if we understood everything, we'd have to stop our YouTube channel, and I quite like it because we kind of have a brief history of mystery when there aren't any mysteries left.
Hey, well,
what a waste of time that'd be.
As I said before, because a wise man was it? No, a fool thinks himself to be a wise man, but a wise man knows himself to be a fool.
Yeah, beautifully put. And I just want to end and say that everything that comes out of these UAP reports and every statement the government release and every piece of evidence they release, just remember to think about, why are they saying that? Why do they talk about supercavitation in that New York Times article? It's because they just want to muddy up the water a little bit. It's a technology that they know cannot be responsible for what we're seeing, but there's just enough of a possibility to it that you go, oh, could it just be that? Could it be a more advanced supercavitation based technology? No, it can't, but that's what they're going to make us believe. And there's enough people out there that'll just desperately.
It gives skeptics something to debunk, doesn't it? It gives a debunking story. That's why they do it. That's what. And then just
let YouTube go.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, here's a little tidbit. YouTube, go. Debunk the crap out of it. There is an agenda going on here. I'm not 100% certain what that agenda is, and I don't think we're going to know for a few years. But there is an agenda going on. They are trying to muddy the waters. What are they trying to hide? Is it aliens or is it advanced technology? Is it both?
Faked alien invasion, where they release a virus, which will be the next pandemic of a disease that's got a much higher fatality rate than coronavirus. So we're then all begging for one world government led by the banking elite to vaccinate us against this virus that these aliens have tried to release to wipe us out. I don't know. That's a narrative for you, maybe.
That's the problem, is there will be a narrative, wasn't it? And I always keep saying as well, the narrative is, since the internet has come along, the Americans have slowly been losing control of the narrative.
Yeah.
I do think there's a very well planned and organised attempt to get hold of that narrative back, and I think this is a small part of it.
Right,
and we're seeing another part of it. Okay, marvellous. Right, okay. Thank you very much. If you are new to the channel and you're still watching, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. You can join the channel and come on live shows with us and do all sorts and get shout outs and things. If you'd like to just give us money on a monthly basis, that'd be great. Yeah, we will see you every Wednesday night on our live shows, and please go across and join us on the Facebook channel, Mystery Machine. I will have a link in the description. Thanks very much. Speak to you next time. Can I say goodbye?
Sorry.
No, ignorant fucker. No, you don't say goodbye to our lovely subscribers. No, don't say anything now. Don't say anything.